Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, sun-baked salt desert, where the air is so dry it burns the throat, watching an elderly baker pull a flatbread from a clay oven. When it comes time to pay, there is no paper cash exchanged, no counting of coins, and certainly no access to the global networks of Visa or MasterCard. Instead, the baker reaches beneath his wooden counter, pulls out a sleek digital terminal, and accepts a local card transaction connected to a completely closed-loop national payment system. Above, the sky is empty of commercial jetliners. Below, a highly sophisticated digital economy hums in absolute silence. This is the central paradox of modern Iran, a civilization of 80 million people thriving inside a virtual fortress, completely severed from the global financial system, yet operating a nearly cashless society that rivals the most advanced smart cities of the West. How does a society not only survive, but maintain its internal equilibrium when the rest of the world has locked its gates and turned away? What occurs to the human spirit when a nation is pushed to what feels like the very end of the earth? To truly understand this isolation, one must first look at the landscape that guards it. Spanning over 1.6 million square kilometers, the Iranian plateau is a fortress of tectonic design, ringed by the colossal, snow-capped barriers of the Alborz and Zagros mountains. These peaks do not merely separate watersheds, they separate realities. Beyond these vertical walls lies a territory where nature has historically demanded absolute adaptation. In the central desert city of Yazd, the sun beats down with a blinding, relentless intensity. For thousands of years, the inhabitants of this arid basin faced a choice: adapt, flee, or perish. They chose to carve their survival deep into the earth. Long before modern drilling rigs or mechanical pumps existed, ancient Persian engineers, known as mechanists, developed the Qanat system. Using nothing but hand tools, they dug vertical shafts into the mountain foothills to tap into deep, subterranean aquifers. From these mother wells, they excavated gently sloping underground tunnels, stretching for dozens of kilometers beneath the burning desert floor, allowing gravity alone to guide the freshwater down to the oases. The engineering was so precise that the downward slope of the tunnels was kept at less than 1 degree to prevent the flowing water from eroding the mud brick channels. By moving water entirely underground, they bypassed the desert's greatest thief, evaporation. Today, Yazd is home to thousands of these active, subterranean lifelines, including the legendary Qanat-e-Zarch, an 80-kilometer underground marvel, where water has flowed continuously for over 2,500 years. One cannot help but wonder, if the world's modern, fragile electrical grids were to collapse tomorrow, how many contemporary metropolitan centers would survive? The ancient Persians did not rely on external energy grids. They designed their entire civilization to run on the laws of physics. When looking up at the skyline of Yazd, the observer does not see steel and glass, but a forest of towering rectangular mud brick structures rising into the sky. These are the badgers, or wind catchers, masterpieces of passive thermodynamic engineering. These hollow towers are partitioned internally to capture the slightest high-altitude breeze, channeling the cool air down into the living spaces, while simultaneously drawing warm, stagnant air upward and out of the building. Often working in perfect harmony with the underground Qanats, the wind catchers utilize evaporative cooling to lower the temperature inside historic homes by up to 10 degrees Celsius without using a single watt of electricity. This was climate control perfected long before the industrial age. But physical infrastructure is only half of the equation. In an isolated world, the structural integrity of a society is ultimately maintained not by stone, but by the invisible bonds of human connection. When traveling through the maze-like, sun-dried adobe alleys of the historic quarters, one begins to sense a profound unwritten code governing every human exchange. This is the intricate Persian social matrix known as Taraf. It is an elaborate system of ritualized politeness, hospitality, and mutual deference that turns even the most mundane commercial transactions into a delicate dance of respect. Imagine hopping into a local taxi, arriving at your destination, and asking the driver for the fare. Instead of naming a price, the driver will look at you warmly and utter the phrase, "Gabel Nader," meaning, "It is nothing, it is unworthy of you, you do not owe me anything." For an uninitiated outsider, this can be incredibly confusing. Does the driver truly wish to offer a free ride? In reality, the driver is performing the opening move of Taraf. The rules dictate that the customer must decline this offer of generosity, insisting on paying. The driver will refuse again, and the customer must insist a second, and often a third time, before the true transaction can finally occur. It is not deceit. It is a mechanism designed to elevate human dignity above the raw, cold calculation of currency. It is an unwritten agreement that, in a world full of external instability, the small space between two people must always remain sacred and safe. In a hyper-individualized modern world where transactions have become completely automated and devoid of human touch, does this level of social grace feel like a relic of the past? Or is it something that has been desperately lost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. It is fascinating to see how different cultures view the balance between money and manners. As the sun begins to set over the clay domes and wind towers, casting long, dramatic shadows across the ancient bricks, the true scale of this journey begins to reveal itself. The journey is about to step deeper into a land where the ancient and the modern do not merely coexist, but fuse into a completely parallel reality. If you are ready for this epic story, drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. Hit the like button, subscribe to Latitude Journal, and turn on notification so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Together, let us explore the hidden corners of our world, step by step. To travel beyond the desert basins of central Iran is to witness a dramatic transition in the earth itself, where the flat, salt-encrusted plains give way to colossal vertical walls of rock and clay. In these high-altitude landscapes, isolation is not merely a political circumstance. It is a physical reality dictated by the folding of tectonic plates. Yet, the human communities that have taken root in these formidable heights have rejected the notion of containment. Instead of viewing the mountains as barriers, they have utilized the stone and soil as the ultimate sanctuary, carving their daily existence directly into the geological strata of the earth. Deep within the dry volcanic mountains of Kerman province lies the ancient settlement of Maymond. For over 3,000 years, humans have inhabited this rugged valley, not by building shelters upon the land, but by hollow carving them into the very cliffs. Here, there are no houses constructed of timber, brick, or mortar. The homes, known locally as kichis, were formed entirely by the deliberate removal of volcanic rock and earth. Each dwelling is a hand-excavated labyrinth, comprising living quarters, storage niches, and stables, all accessed through a single, narrow opening that serves as the sole source of natural light. When entering these subterranean chambers, a heavy, quiet stillness envelopes the observer. The air inside remains cool in the blistering heat of summer and warm during the freezing mountain winters. Insulated by meters of solid stone, looking up at the low, curved ceilings, one notices they are blackened with a thick layer of soot. For centuries, the inhabitants burned firewood in central hearths to keep warm, and over the generations, the rising smoke settled into the volcanic rock, creating a natural carbon-rich seal that reinforces the structural integrity of the caves and prevents the earth from crumbling. It is a striking visual testament to the passage of time, a physical archive of thousands of winters written in ash upon the stone. The daily rhythm of Maymond is governed by a deep, nomadic agricultural cycle that has remained virtually unchanged for millennia. The residents do not remain in their cave dwellings year-round. Instead, they migrate 3 times a year, moving in harmony with the changing seasons. In the spring, they leave the caves to live in lightweight, circular structures in the lower valleys, grazing their animals on fresh pastures. In the summer, they relocate to northern orchards to harvest wild pistachios, almonds, and fruits, shelter-seeking beneath temporary structures made of branches and leaves. Only when the harsh, snowy winter descends do they return to the warmth of their rock-cut sanctuaries. This seasonal migration is not born of restlessness, but of a profound ecological wisdom, a conscious choice to avoid overexploiting the delicate resources of any single landscape. Further north, nestled deep within the humid, forest-clad Alborz Mountains of Gilan Province, lies another architectural marvel that redefines the relationship between humanity and the vertical landscape. This is the stepped village of Masule. Founded over 1,000 years ago along the historic Silk Road, Masule clings to a mountainside so steep that the entire settlement functions as a single, multi-tiered structure. The houses are painted a vibrant, earthy yellow, a deliberate choice that allows them to remain visible to travelers, navigating the thick, heavy mists that roll off the Caspian Sea and shroud the high valleys for 1/3 of the year. The most extraordinary feature of Masule is its ingenious configuration of public and private space. In this vertical community, the concept of a traditional street does not exist. Instead, the flat, clay and straw roof of each house serves as the pedestrian pathway, courtyard, and public thoroughfare for the home directly above it. To walk through the village is to embark on an upward journey, where the boundary between public life and private domesticity completely dissolves. One steps gently across a neighbor's rooftop, walking past small terraces where women knit wool dolls and vendors display colorful spices, before ascending a narrow stone staircase to reach the next level of streets. Because of this unique, interconnected layout, Masule is the only settlement in Iran where all motor vehicles are strictly prohibited. The narrow, winding stairways and sheer verticality make the entry of cars physically impossible. The absence of mechanical noise creates an atmosphere of rare tranquility, where the dominant sounds are the rushing waters of the nearby river, the rustle of leaves in the mountain wind, and the quiet murmur of human conversation. It is a city designed entirely for the human scale, where physical movement requires physical effort, and where every step connects the traveler to the physical structure of another person's home. This architectural integration forces a unique social contract upon the community. In Masule, the rooftops are not private property to be guarded with high walls or locked gates. They are a shared public commons. The residents have collectively agreed that the exterior of their shelters belongs to the community, creating a profound sense of mutual trust and shared responsibility. It is an environment where the physical structure of the village actively discourages isolation, weaving the lives of neighbors together in a physical tapestry of wood, clay, and stone. To stand on a rooftop in Masula as the evening fog begins to roll through the valleys, obscuring the green slopes below and leaving only the yellow houses floating in a sea of white, is to experience a deep sense of wonder. It challenges the conventional understanding of urban design and human cohabitation. It forces one to reflect on the modern obsession with division, where high concrete walls and individual boundary lines are used to partition lives. In contemporary, hyper-connected cities, civilizations have built towering structures of concrete and glass that separate neighbors, allowing individuals to live side by side in absolute anonymity. Yet, in these isolated mountain sanctuaries, people have chosen to live in spaces where one's roof is another's street, and where survival depends on a shared physical foundation. Does the modern pursuit of absolute privacy and individual space come at the cost of genuine human connection? Have contemporary societies traded the rich warmth of a shared community for the cold comfort of isolated convenience? Share your perspectives in the comments below. It is deeply moving to hear how different people across the globe perceive the balance between personal space and communal living. As the mountain air grows colder and the lights of the stepped houses begin to flicker through the rising mist, the focus of this exploration must shift from the physical stones of the mountains to the invisible digital systems that connect them. The journey is preparing to descend from these vertical sanctuaries into a parallel technological universe. A realm where a nation under siege has built its own sovereign pathways through the virtual world. To leave the northern heights and the digital networks of the capital behind is to descend into a completely different realm of isolation, where the dry mountain air of the interior yields to the heavy, salt-laden humidity of the Persian Gulf. Here, scattered across the turquoise waters of the strait, lie islands that have stood as critical maritime gatekeepers for centuries. Yet, among these isolated outposts, there is one place that defies all geographical expectations, appearing less like a terrestrial landscape and more like a canvas painted by an otherworldly hand. This is Hormuz, known to the few travelers who find it as the Rainbow Island. When the observer steps off the local ferry onto the sun-bleached concrete of the harbor, the physical transition is immediate and absolute. The concrete quickly gives way to a terrain composed of brilliant, saturated hues. Hormuz is a volcanic dome, a geological anomaly where salt, iron, and over 70 different minerals have pushed through the ocean floor over millions of years, creating a landscape of red, yellow, ochre, and turquoise mountains. The earth here does not merely hold color, it radiates it. Along the coastline, the red beach meets the sea in a striking display of crimson sands, where the waves themselves run dark red as they wash over the shore, carrying dissolved iron oxides from the surrounding hills. Nearby, the silver beach glitters under the intense Gulf sun, its sands embedded with microscopic crystals of hematite that sparkle like a field of fallen stars. This striking visual environment is preserved by a profound absence of modern urban development. On Hormuz, the rush of vehicular traffic is entirely non-existent. There are no cars on the island, save for a few utility vehicles. Instead, the singular, narrow ring road that loops around the 30-kilometer perimeter of the territory is traveled almost exclusively by three-wheeled open-air rickshaws, known as tuk-tuks, and light motorbikes. Winding along the coastal cliffs, these small vehicles carry travelers and locals past sheer mineral walls that shift in color from deep gold to dark burgundy with every turn. The absence of heavy engine noise allows the natural acoustics of the island to reclaim the air, re-establishing a connection to the primary elements of the sea and the wind. Nowhere is this auditory restoration more complete than in the Silence Valley, tucked deep within the interior of the island. This narrow gorge is carved from massive, crystalline salt formations that rise like white glaciers against the blue sky. As one walks deeper into the canyon, a strange, heavy quiet descends, absorbing every footstep. The salt walls possess a unique physical density, dampening sound waves so completely that the valley exists in a state of absolute, perpetual silence. There is no sound of wind, no bird song, and no murmur of distant waves. It is a space of pure sensory deprivation. A place where the mind is forced to quiet its own internal chatter and simply observe the stillness of the earth. But the true wonder of Hormuz lies in how the small population of several thousand inhabitants has integrated this geological reality into their daily survival. The local Bandari communities, who have occupied the main village for generations, do not merely live upon this colored earth. They live with it in the most literal sense. On Hormuz, the iron-rich red soil, known locally as Sirach, is not classified as waste or simple stone. It is a recognized culinary ingredient. For centuries, the island's bakers and home cooks have harvested this pure red clay from the hills, utilizing it as a natural seasoning. To witness the preparation of tamshi, the traditional flatbread of the island, is to see the ultimate convergence of humanity and landscape. On a hot iron skillet, a thin layer of dough is spread before being drizzled with eggs, local cheese, a fermented fish sauce, and a generous splash of a vibrant red liquid made by dissolving the island's red soil in water. The resulting bread is crispy, savory, and stained a deep, earthy crimson. To eat this bread is to physically consume the very island itself. A profound act of culinary communion where the boundary between the human body and the geological foundation of home is entirely erased. This deep, physical reliance on the local environment is mirrored in the cultural traditions that the islanders continue to guard. The women of Hormuz, navigating a quiet maritime existence where traditional, brightly colored dresses and hand-woven mask-like face coverings known as borage. These face coverings are not symbols of withdrawal. Rather, they are historically practical shields designed to protect the skin from the blistering salt winds of the Gulf, while simultaneously expressing a unique regional identity that blends Persian, Arab, and Indian cultural influences. Life here moves with the tide, structured by the daily departure of fishing boats and the seasonal harvesting of the sea's resources. To stand on the red cliffs of Hormuz as the sun sets over the Persian Gulf, turning the water into a sheet of liquid gold, while the red shore runs dark beneath the tide, is to feel the weight of an incredibly ancient world. It is a reminder that even in an age of hyper-industrialization and global displacement, there are still communities that remain anchored to the literal dust from which they came. It challenges the modern urban observer to reflect on the nature of their own domestic existence. In our contemporary, globalized world, most of what we consume is entirely disconnected from the place we live. Our food is flown across oceans. Our homes are built of imported materials, and we rarely touch the bare earth beneath our feet. Yet, on this tiny, isolated island, the inhabitants eat the very soil of their home, move in silence, and find complete sustenance within a 30-kilometer ring of rock. Does our modern, detached way of living make us more advanced? Or have we merely become strangers to the very earth that supports us? Have we lost the ability to find contentment in the quiet simplicity of a single, colorful horizon? Share your reflections in the comments below. It is deeply moving to hear how those watching from busy cities and distant lands perceive this absolute, physical connection to the earth. If this chapter has touched you, please take a moment to like the video and share it with those who appreciate these quiet, deeper journeys into the human experience. As the crimson shores of Hormuz fade into the dark of the southern night, the focus of this documentary must turn once more. The journey is preparing to leave the ocean behind, traveling inland toward the vast, hyper-arid plains of the Central Plateau, where the struggle for survival takes on a far more demanding, elemental scale. To leave the coastal breezes of the Persian Gulf and travel northward into the vast interior of the Iranian plateau is to enter a landscape of absolute elemental severity. Here, the earth seems to have been stripped of all gentleness, presenting a face of raw, unyielding power. Walled in by mountain ranges, the central basins of Iran contain some of the most arid and thermally extreme deserts on Earth. Foremost among these is the Dasht Lut, a hyper-arid desert basin where the land does not merely absorb the sun's heat, it transforms it into a crucible of geological pressure. The Lut Desert is officially recognized as one of the thermal poles of the planet. Satellite data has recorded surface temperatures here exceeding 70 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense that it surpasses the tolerance of almost all biological life, leaving vast stretches of the desert completely sterile. Yet, as the traveler moves deeper into this hyper-arid wilderness, the flat sand dunes give way to a sight that defies all expectations, appearing like the abandoned metropolis of an ancient, colossal civilization. These are the Kaluts, towering yardangs of clay, salt, and sand that rise from the desert floor like majestic, wind-carved skyscrapers. These colossal formations are the result of millions of years of wind erosion, sculpted by the relentless wind of 120 days that sweeps across the region during the summer months. Standing amidst these clay monoliths, the observer is enveloped in a profound, heavy silence. The Kaluts stretch for over 120 kilometers across the desert, creating a labyrinth of sheer walls, deep canyons, and vast, flat corridors that shift in color, deep gold to dark burgundy, as the sun moves across the sky. To walk through this silent maze is to feel entirely displaced from the modern world, stepping into a raw, primeval landscape that feels more akin to the surface of Mars than to Earth. This breathtaking, extreme landscape directly mirrors the visual majesty found in the most popular travel documentaries, where the sheer scale of raw nature is used to create a profound sense of awe and intellectual curiosity. It is a visual testament to the power of natural forces, showing that the most dramatic structures on Earth are not built by human hands, but carved by the slow, persistent passage of time and wind. But the story of the Iranian desert is not merely one of empty geological wonders. Just beyond the western edge of the Lut Basin, nestled within the rugged valleys of Kerman Province, lies a human sanctuary that has withstood the elements for thousands of years. This is the ancient troglodyte settlement of Maymand, inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Maymand is a living testament to human resilience, where the inhabitants have bypassed the harsh mountain winters and scorching summers by carving their entire lives directly into the volcanic rock. For over 3,000 years, humans have continuously inhabited this remote valley, not by constructing houses upon the land, but by hollow carving them into the volcanic cliffs. These hand-excavated dwellings, known locally as quiches, are dug directly into the soft rock, providing natural insulation that maintains a stable temperature inside. Completely independent of the extreme weather outside, there are over 400 of these unique rock-cut units, comprising thousands of rooms that stack on top of one another along the steep hillsides, looking out over the dry riverbed below. When entering one of these ancient cave homes, the traveler is immediately struck by the absolute simplicity of the design. The walls and low curved ceilings are blackened by a thick, velvety layer of soot. For generations, the families burned firewood in central hearths to keep warm during the sub-zero mountain winters. Over the centuries, the rising smoke settled into the volcanic stone, creating a natural, carbon-rich seal that reinforces the structural integrity of the cave walls and prevents the dry earth from crumbling. This dark patina is not a sign of neglect, but a physical archive of human survival, a legacy written in ash upon the stone. The daily life of Maymond is governed by a semi-nomadic agricultural cycle that has remained virtually unchanged for millennia. The residents do not remain in their rock-cut sanctuaries year-round. Instead, they migrate 3 times a year, moving in harmony with the changing seasons to protect their delicate environment from over-exploitation. In the spring, they leave the caves to live in the lower pastures, grazing their animals in round, semi-underground shelters. In the summer, they relocate to northern orchards to harvest wild pistachios and almonds, sheltering in lightweight structures made of leaves and branches. Only when the freezing winter winds begin to howl do they return to the warmth of their hand-carved stone homes. This ancient lifestyle represents a profound understanding of ecological balance, a conscious choice to live with nature rather than against it, in an era where modern societies rely on massive, energy-intensive grids to dominate their surroundings. The people of Maymond show that true sustainability is achieved through adaptation, mobility, and deep respect for the limits of the earth. This stark contrast between ancient resilience and modern fragility forces a profound question upon the observer. In our contemporary, fast-paced world, civilizations have constructed complex, artificial environments designed for immediate, effortless comfort. Yet, this absolute reliance on external power and global supply chains has left modern societies incredibly vulnerable to systemic shocks. Have we, in our relentless pursuit of speed and convenience, lost the ancient capacity to endure? Have we traded the deep, enduring strength of stone and community for the fleeting illusion of effortless ease? Observers are invited to share their perspectives in the comments below. It is fascinating to discover how different people across the globe view the balance between technological progress and the preservation of ancient, sustainable lifeways. If this epic journey into the hidden structures of our world resonates, consider leaving a like, subscribing to Latitude Journal, and sharing this exploration with others who seek the quiet, deeper narratives of our shared human heritage. As the long shadows of the clay monoliths lengthen across the desert floor, turning the Lut Basin into a sea of dark gold and deep shadow, the journey prepares to transition once more. The focus of this documentary must leave the silent, searing plains behind, traveling toward the historic cities of the Central Plateau, where the struggle for survival took on a highly structured civilizational scale, giving birth to some of the most sophisticated urban planning in the ancient world. To travel northwest from the central desert basins toward the rugged green highlands of East Azerbaijan is to witness a profound transformation in the architecture of human survival. Here, where the volcanic slopes of Mount Sahand meet the sky, the landscape shifts from dry ochre plains to dramatic, wind-swept valleys. Yet, even in these high-altitude terrains, the ancient inhabitants chose not to build upon the earth, but to merge their lives directly with the surreal geological formations left behind by primeval eruptions. This is Kandavan, an extraordinary troglodyte village that appears less like a human settlement and more like a colossal, naturally sculpted hive of stone cones. The visual impact of Kandavan is immediate and utterly mesmerizing, directly echoing the jaw-dropping, unreal landscapes that capture the imaginations of millions of observers worldwide. Rising sharply from the valley floor are hundreds of towering, cone-shaped rock formations. Sculpted over thousands of years by the relentless forces of wind and water eroding the volcanic ash and debris of Mount Sahand, these porous, pointed rocks resemble a surreal forest of stone chimneys. For at least 800 years, families have inhabited these volcanic cones, hand-carving multi-story homes, stables, and storage rooms directly into the living rock. When walking through the narrow vertical pathways of Kandavan, the traveler is struck by the absolute absence of flat, open streets. The village climbs steeply up the volcanic cliffs, with narrow stone stairs winding between the massive rock cones. Each cone is a self-contained vertical household, often rising 3 to 4 stories high. The ground floor is typically reserved for livestock, while the upper levels contain the living quarters, kitchens, and workshops. The thick volcanic stone acts as a natural thermodynamic barrier, insulating the interior spaces so completely that they remain wonderfully cool during the searing summer heat and retain warmth during the freezing, snow-locked winters of the northern highlands. This ancient, hand-carved way of life is not a frozen relic of the past, but a living, breathing reality where residents continue to practice their traditional nomadic agricultural customs. The water that sustains this unique community is drawn from a legendary mineral spring, flowing directly from the heart of the mountain, believed by locals to possess powerful healing properties. Life here moves with a quiet, deliberate gravity, far removed from the hyper-stimulated pace of modern urban centers. It is an environment where every home is as a physical extension of the mountain itself, demonstrating a level of ecological harmony that feels almost mythical to the contemporary observer. But the mastery of natural elements on the Iranian plateau is not confined to the carving of stone. It is equally reflected in the ancient engineering of water. To travel southwest toward the historic plains of Khuzestan is to encounter a civilizational achievement of an entirely different scale. One that represents one of the most sophisticated hydraulic systems of the ancient world. This is the Shushtar Historical Hydraulic System, a breathtaking heritage site that looks like a fantasy city carved directly into the cliffs. Dating back to the Sasanian Empire, Shushtar is a massive, multifunctional water management system comprising dams, canals, bridges, hand-carved tunnels, and an unreal network of historic water mills. The ancient engineers did not merely divert the flow of the mighty river. They completely reshaped the hydrology of the entire region to facilitate agricultural irrigation. domestic supply, and mechanical power. The centerpiece of this system is a dramatic cliffside basin where the diverted river water is channeled through a series of hand-cut stone tunnels, emerging as dozens of artificial waterfalls that plunge thunderously into a central pool, driving the wooden wheels of ancient watermills below. To stand on the stone viewing platforms of Shushtar as the evening sun casts a golden glow over the rushing waters is to experience a profound sense of awe. The sheer scale of the hand-carved rock channels, the thunderous roar of the cascading waterfalls, and the intricate web of tunnels carved through solid limestone represent a level of engineering sophistication that seems almost impossible for its time. It is a stunning visual spectacle, a monument to human ingenuity, where the power of a mighty river was successfully harnessed without destroying the natural equilibrium of the landscape. This masterfully engineered harmony between civilization and the elements raises a profound question for the modern world. In contemporary cities, humanity has chosen to conquer nature, paving over waterways with concrete, blasting through mountains with dynamite, and relying on energy-intensive, fragile technologies to maintain daily existence. Yet, this aggressive approach has left modern societies increasingly disconnected from the natural systems that sustain life, leaving cities highly vulnerable to ecological collapse. When looking at the enduring stone cones of Kandavan or the ancient, gravity-powered waterfalls of Shushtar, one must ask, has modern civilization, in its rush toward industrial progress, forgotten how to build in harmony with the earth? Have contemporary societies traded the timeless, resilient wisdom of ancient engineering for the fleeting, fragile comfort of modern dominance? Is it possible that the key to a sustainable future lies not in the creation of more complex machines, but in a humble return to the physical laws of nature? Observers are invited to share their reflections in the comments below. It is deeply fascinating to hear how viewers from different parts of the globe perceive this balance between ancient sustainability and modern development. If this epic journey into the hidden structures of our world resonates, consider leaving a like, subscribing to Latitude Journal, and sharing this exploration with others who seek the quiet, deeper narratives of our shared human heritage. As the roar of the Shushtar waterfalls continues to echo through the historic stone basins, the focus of this documentary must prepare to shift once more. The journey is preparing to leave the ancient stones and flowing waters behind, embarking on a deeper exploration of the social and economic forces that sustain this isolated nation, revealing the quiet, resilient systems of survival that operate far beneath the surface of the global spotlight. To travel deeper into the rugged, wind-swept canyons of the Elborz Mountains is to seek out a legendary sanctuary that exists at the very limit of physical accessibility. Here, where the vertical cliffs of the Alamut Valley rise like massive stone sentinels against the sky, one feels a profound sense of entering a forbidden domain. This is the realm of Alamut Castle, the legendary Eagle's Nest, a fortress perched so precariously on a razor-sharp mountain ridge that it seems to defy the very laws of gravity. This awe-inspiring sight directly mirrors the colossal cliffside fortresses and high-altitude mountain sanctuaries that have captured the imaginations of observers on the most successful digital documentary platforms. Founded in the late 9th century, Alamut became the formidable headquarters of the Nizari Ismaili state under the visionary leadership of Hassani Sabah. The fortress was designed with absolute defensive genius, occupying a narrow rock plateau that rises over 2,000 meters above sea level, with sheer, vertical drops on all sides. The only access to the castle was a single, steep, winding pathway carved directly into the stone, making the citadel virtually impregnable to medieval siege engines. But the true marvel of Alamut lay not in its military defenses, but in its sophisticated internal infrastructure. Under Saba's rule, the isolated fortress became a world-class center of science, philosophy, and astronomy, housing a legendary library that attracted scholars from across the Islamic world. The inhabitants engineered an intricate water catchment and storage system, carving deep cisterns into the solid rock to capture rainwater, and building underground supply channels that allowed the garrison to survive indefinite blockades. This was a civilization that refused to let its physical containment limit its intellectual and spiritual horizons, constructing a parallel state of profound influence from a single, isolated peak. Yet, the mountain fortresses of Iran are not only monuments to military defiance, they are also ancient sanctuaries of faith and memory. To travel south toward the hyper-arid desert mountains of Yazd province is to encounter a sacred site that clings to a sheer cliff face like a living part of the mountain itself. This is Chak Chak, the legendary Piri Sabs, the most sacred pilgrimage site of the Zoroastrian faith. Nestled deep within a rugged mountain canyon, Chak Chak is an architectural wonder of extreme verticality. The shrine does not stand upon a flat foundation. Instead, its bronze doors and stone terraces are built directly into the side of a towering barren cliff. The name Chak Chak translates to drip drip in Persian, a direct reference to the natural mystery that defines the sanctuary. Inside the cave-like shrine, water continuously drips from the ceiling of the solid rock face, falling onto the stone floor where a holy fire has been kept burning for centuries. According to ancient legend, this water represents the tears of the mountain, weeping for Nikbanu, the daughter of the last Sasanian king of Persia. Fleeing the invading Arab armies in the 7th century, the princess found herself trapped against the dry, vertical cliff face. In her despair, she prayed to the mountain to protect her, and the rock miraculously parted, enveloping her and shielding her from her pursuers. Since that day, the dry desert mountain has continuously wept freshwater, nourishing a massive, ancient plane tree that grows directly out of the stone cliff. To stand on the high terraces of Chak Chak, looking out over the silent, shimmering desert plains while the soft sound of water dripping echoes through the stone cave, is to experience a deep, transcendent peace. It is a place where the harshness of the desert and the vulnerability of human history dissolve into a timeless natural sanctuary. The pilgrims who journey here do not seek luxury or speed. They ascend hundreds of stone steps under the hot sun, simply to stand in the presence of this weeping mountain, remembering their ancestors and honoring the resilience of their ancient faith. This profound reliance on sacred, isolated spaces raises a compelling question for the modern world. In our fast-paced, hyper-stimulated daily lives, we are constantly surrounded by noise, screens, and artificial distractions. We rarely seek spaces of true silence, and we often fear the vulnerability of being alone with our thoughts. Yet these ancient sanctuaries show that true strength, peace, and intellectual clarity are often found not in the crowded centers of the world, but in the quiet, demanding isolation of the heights. Do you believe that modern society has lost the capacity for deep reflection by eliminating silence from daily life? Have we traded the profound, enduring sanctuaries of the spirit for the fleeting, superficial noise of constant digital connection? Observers are invited to share their thoughts in the comments below. It is deeply fascinating to read how people from different cultures and walks of life view the need for quiet sanctuaries in the modern world. If this journey into the unseen fortresses of the human spirit has resonated with you, please hit the like button. Share this video with others who appreciate deep storytelling. And subscribe to Latitude Journal as we prepare to embark on the final, most revealing chapter of this epic exploration. As the mountain winds of Alamut and the dripping waters of Chak fade into the quiet of the desert night, the journey prepares to face its ultimate destination. We are ready to step into the shadow realities and quiet crises of this isolated land, exploring the human trade-offs of persistent containment, before gathering these diverse threads into a final, poetic understanding of what truly endures when the noise of the globalized world is stripped away. To comprehend a civilization pushed to the absolute edge of geopolitical containment is to look past the ancient monuments, the rugged mountain cliffs, and the seamless digital interfaces, and to gaze directly into the quiet, persistent shadows that outline daily life. No structure, no matter how ingeniously engineered, can exist under decades of pressure without carrying the internal fractures of its isolation. In Iran, the romanticism of self-reliance is constantly balanced by the heavy, sobering weight of real-world constraints, where the struggle for survival is not merely a historical legend, but a daily, intimate negotiation for millions of ordinary families. The first and most visible fracture is the persistent, hyperinflationary erosion of the national currency. In a society completely severed from global financial networks, the value of the rial fluctuates wildly, creating an environment of perpetual economic anxiety. For the small business owner in the Tehran bazaar or the school teacher in the historic alleys of Yazd, prices for basic groceries, medicine, and imported goods do not merely rise from year to year, but sometimes from week to week. Ordinary citizens must constantly adapt, calculating their survival in a parallel financial landscape, where saving money in local currency is like holding water in cupped hands. This economic strain forces a relentless, exhausting hustle, turning the simple act of maintaining a middle-class existence into an act of profound daily resilience. Yet the deepest and most poignant crisis affecting this isolated nation is not the loss of capital, but the quiet, steady flight of its most precious resource, its human capital. Iran possesses a highly educated, intellectually vibrant, and digitally native youth. The universities of Tehran, Shiraz, and Isfahan produce brilliant scientists, innovative software developers, and visionary artists every single year. But within the closed-loop economic fortress, the domestic market is simply too small, and the international pathways are too heavily blocked to absorb this massive reservoir of talent. Consequently, a quiet, devastating brain drain occurs as tens of thousands of the nation's academic and professional elite choose to leave their homeland behind, seeking global integration and stable futures across the oceans. This persistent emigration leaves behind a profound social silence, a landscape marked by empty chairs at family dinners, silent laboratories in research hubs, and a deep intergenerational separation. For those who depart, the transition to the Western or globalized world offers professional fulfillment, but demands a painful cultural detachment. For the families who remain, Life becomes a series of digital video calls stretched across distant time zones, a fragile bridge of pixels attempting to span the immense void left by geopolitical containment. The true cost of isolation is ultimately measured not in currency devaluations or trade deficits, but in this quiet, permanent fracturing of the social fabric. Beneath this economic pressure, another silent tension vibrates through the daily lives of the population. This is the profound, unyielding gap between the traditional, highly conservative social and political structures of the state and the modern, progressive aspirations of its youngest citizens. A youth that has grown up completely connected to the global digital grid, despite the state's domestic firewalls, inevitably looks at the world with a different lens than the generations that came before. This internal friction manifests in quiet, daily acts of cultural negotiation. In the subtle adjustments of a headscarf, the creation of underground art networks, and the private spaces where young people express their authentic identities, far from the watchful eyes of public authorities. It is a society living in two completely separate dimensions, one public and strictly defined, the other private, vibrant, and deeply connected to the global current. By carefully analyzing the successful models of long-form geographical documentaries, such as those depicting the unreal and unseen corners of our planet, one begins to understand that the ultimate allure of these narratives does not lie in the physical geometry of the cliffs, the volcanic caves, or the cascading waterfalls. The true power of these journeys lies in the revelation of human adaptability. The unseen world of Iran is not merely a collection of mud brick wind towers, colored salt domes, or vertical mountain fortresses. It is the complex, beautiful, and deeply moving human landscape that survives inside the fortress. It is a civilization that has refused to surrender its dignity, its cultural warmth, and its profound poetic soul, even when the rest of the world has closed its doors. This brings the observer to a final, vital takeaway. In our contemporary, globalized societies, we are constantly encouraged to move faster, consume more, and measure our worth by the speed of our connections and the scale of our material accumulations. We live in a world of effortless transactions and absolute convenience, yet we often feel a strange, hollow isolation within our hyper-connectivity. But on this dry desert plateau, inside a nation cut off from the global grid, one witnesses a people who have preserved the ancient, slow-paced art of being human. They have kept the sacred space of Tarof, the communal trust of the vertical rooftops, and the quiet comfort of gathering together over a simple cup of tea, reminding us that what truly endures is not the noise of the global marketplace, but the quiet depth of mutual reliance. Does this isolated parallel world challenge the conventional understanding of progress? Have we, in our relentless drive for global convenience, sacrificed the very communal bonds and slow-paced wisdom that make life meaningful? Viewers are invited to share their deep reflections in the comments below. It is always deeply moving to read how observers from different cultures, backgrounds, and nations perceive these profound questions of human connection. If this epic 7-chapter journey into the hidden structures and resilient souls of our world has touched your heart, please consider hitting the like button, sharing this documentary with others who seek deeper, more meaningful stories, and subscribing to Latitude Journal. Supporting such independent, analytical exploration is a powerful act of cultural stewardship, ensuring that the quiet, unseen narratives of our shared humanity are never lost in the noise of the modern world.